Hi, JD.
Morning, Trudy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good, good, good. I'm pretty excited about starting this conversation. I'm telling you, it's been a long time coming, it seems like.
I know some of these things can take an awfully long time to get moving, so
Yeah.
I understand.
Hi, Allie.
Hello, how are you? Hi, Judy.
Good morning, Allie.
I went in to start the meeting and then I couldn't remember my password. It's really becoming an irritation when you can't remember a password.
Yes.
Reset it. I'm like, oh my God, I have like 2 minutes.
And it feels like I have to reset them all the time. And then it's like, which one is that? How many do I have to go back?
Yeah.
No, I'm not supposed to all have the same one, but damn it.
Exactly.
And
Can I
love when
just
they're
have
not
3 the same?
Yeah. when they're not on the same schedule, right? It feels like 1 month you change this, and then I'm like, okay.
Uh-huh.
I do try to like get in the habit of when I change one, like the main ones, just update. And I have a little note in my phone that I do kind of keep those because
I might have something like that too, even though I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to.
yeah, I know. And I put
Hi,
like
Amy.
little clever. Isn't
Morning,
it-
Amy.
Good morning. How are
Oh.
you guys today?
Good, good.
Yeah,
here.
it's a loaded question, quite frankly, at this point in the school year.
A
So
little bit. I was trying to
sorry.
think of, should I tell the truth or what I want?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we're actually on Easter break, so I'm
Oh,
working
yay.
at home. Yeah, it's not a
That's nice.
not a bad thing.
Yeah, good. I had heard back at the beginning of the year or something that districts were hoping to provide more breaks, and then I was really hoping with all the snow that we weren't going to have teachers lose time because of that. So I'm glad that it seems to be holding true that perhaps you guys are not losing time
Not right
because of snow and things like that. And I hope that you were able to have more breaks than you normally may have in a year. But anyway, okay. The only one that's not here that I was expecting is Jeremy, and I'm not sure. Oh no, I still have 2 more. Sorry.
Okay.
So give just another minute, I think. How are you, Bethany and Rob and Amy? Welcome, welcome.
Good.
It's my birthday today, so all is good. I'm a fool all the way
Oh,
around.
you were one of them that was born on April 1st. Oh my gosh. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay. I just texted him to see if he's going to be able to join us.
Allie, you're the second person now I've seen use the kind of blur filter, and I kind of like it. Yeah, I've seen that a couple times now, and I don't know, I kind of like it almost better than the logo ones. Yeah.
I found it depends on what I'm wearing. I know that's a funny qualification there. But with the white, my shoulders and the picture pixelates even more. So yeah, just depending on what, coordinate
Yeah.
backgrounds with our outfits now. That's the
Well,
new virtual.
I'm concerned that even with the blur background, you people would still be able to see my bedroom. And I'm like, no, I don't really want that to happen. So I'll use a background.
When I'm at home, I like the blurred background, but at work, I have the back side of some bookcases behind me. So it's just this brown blah. And when you blur it, it looks even more blah. So, yeah. So when I'm at work, I use this one.
Ah, oh, golly. Okay, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully Maddie Fennell was also supposed to be joining us, and I don't know if something came up with her, and then Leslie Eastman was also going to be joining us, and she let me know this morning that she would not be able to join. And then, of course, Jeremy had wanted to make sure that he was a part of this conversation too, even though he knows all this stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you. But so I think all of you know each other, so I don't know that we have to do the introductions, but I am going to go ahead and share the agenda initially, and then a document that I put together for various people to understand what the vision is, at least in for the post. Oh, here's Maddie. So I'll wait. Hi. Oh, Maddie. Yeah, there she is. Hi, Maddie.
Yep, I'm here. Sorry,
Oh.
I'm just finishing. I'm in the car. I'll be home in a minute, but I
Okay.
didn't want to miss anything. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Thank you for coming. I've not met you, I think, officially, but I'm Trudy Clark. I'm the Assistant Director of Statewide Assessment, and I'm going to be the project lead for NDE on this formative assessment supports network. That's what I'm calling it because of all the different parts to it. And then I think you know everybody else, but JD, if you want to just, we'll mention who's here, okay?
Sure. JD Miller, Director of Assessment, Elkhorn.
Okay, Allie?
Allie Martinez Wilkinson, NWEA Professional Learning Lead for Nebraska.
Amy?
I'm Amy Trowernicht, and I'm a professional learning coordinator out of the ESU 13 in the Panhandle of Nebraska.
And Bethany?
Bethany Brunsman, Assessment Evaluation Specialist for Lincoln Public Schools and ESU 18.
Amy?
I'm Amy Mancini, and I am a building administrator for Columbus Public Schools.
And Rob?
Rob McIntyre, same as Bethany.
Okay. And Maddie,
And-
Leslie Eastman, I'm sorry, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
I was just going to introduce myself. Yeah, I'm Maddie Fennell. I'm the Executive Director of the Nebraska State Education Association, and I actually have my endorsement in assessment.
Okay, thank you. So Leslie Eastman had planned on being a part of this group. She just was not able to meet with us this morning. And Jeremy Henniger, you know Jeremy, Director of a Statewide Assessment, he'll be coming on a little bit later. But so getting back to the agenda, I'm going to review, like I said, the vision that I have of the Formative Assessment Supports Network and all the parts that go into it. And then there'll be some conversation around that afterwards that I'd like for us to have from you folks in terms of what do you have in your districts that speaks to the work. Does the vision fit with what you feel is important to provide Nebraska educators, the timing of the rollout for various components, and then I'll have, I'd sure like to entertain any questions that you have, but right now I am going to share what I have in terms of this network system that I'm hoping to see in place. So the first part is then building this assessment literacy in Nebraska educators. I think all of us know that while there are parts of or pieces of assessment literacy that is promoted in higher ed, graduates that are coming out of the teacher prep programs don't necessarily have a high level of assessment literacy. And besides that, with the movement sort of away from and towards more of a NSCAS test situation, there aren't a lot of opportunities for our Nebraska educators to really develop a strong assessment literacy foundation. Now we have the certified facilitators, and they're great because they do a nice job of that. But I hope that you would agree with me that I don't feel that we're going to get every single teacher. And even with this program, I know we're not going to get every single teacher, but that's the goal, to really enhance and expand assessment literacy in Nebraska educators. So one of the first things for that is to develop standards of assessment literacy along the lines of what we found with the Michigan Assessment Consortium standards. And what I'm hoping is that those assessment literacy standards would be the foundation of all the work that's going forward, because I really truly believe that you need to have a strong foundation in assessment literacy if you're going to understand formative assessment processes. Beyond the fact that there's summative assessment, benchmark, all of the different pieces, interim, and all of those pieces, I think those are obviously important, but in my mind, formative assessment, the kind of assessment process that is going to inform the teacher then and there and make adjustments to instruction then and there, really is going to be more impactful than the others. So that's why we are really trying to enhance, support, expand formative assessment understanding in our teachers and principals and anybody else, actually. So I'm looking to connect the assessment literacy standards work with the teacher and principal effectiveness standards, specifically around assessment literacy. So Kim Snyder's work out of NDE, we are looking to align or make connections there. And also then to create a team of assessment educator leaders to review and lead some development in formative assessment processes, tools, instruments, and so forth. The second piece to this is connecting with higher ed. On March 2nd of 2021, I had, and Allie's been my partner along with this as a professional learning lead and someone who is very familiar with formative assessment processes. She and I are working on this together. But we had a conversation with higher ed folks, not a lot of them, unfortunately, but we had questions for them around their pre-service assessment literacy work and wanted to know what they cover, when in the instruction are they covering assessment in the curriculum, just where are they in terms of supporting this assessment literacy work. And I don't think that will be much of a surprise to you that they really don't have a dedicated strand even for assessment literacy. I think only one that we spoke to, one representative, mentioned that there is a measurement class. And so they do bring up assessment literacy there. But out of the, let's see, we had Doane, UNL, UNO. Who else, Allie? Did we have somebody else besides those three? UNO, UNL, Doane. We were going to have Wayne, but she contracted COVID, so that she wasn't able to join. But out of those higher institutions, they really could not say that they had a dedicated any program, any curriculum to assessment literacy. So those are going to be ongoing conversations. And one of the next steps is to further that along with more focus groups in terms of finding out a little bit more about that. Yes, Maddie.
Does University of Nebraska-Lincoln, did they discontinue their endorsement and assessment?
Yes, they did.
I thought they had, but I wanted to confirm that.
Yes, they did. And that was a conversation that I had with the Brad Dirkson's group.
Mhm.
And Kelly Heineke was there, and I was just trying to probe a little bit with them before I spoke with higher ed about that, because I had heard about that unfortunate decision and wanted to speak with them about how that might be reframed. But yeah, Amy, did you have a question too?
Well, no, I was just going to tell you that I've taught in the teacher prep in the transitional certification program at UNK for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So if you want a picture into UNK or some context there, I'd be happy to help you out with that.
Great, because yeah, I do want to specifically talk to like Hastings, Chadron, Wayne. I really want Wayne in there. Peru State, I know they have a teacher prep program. I just want to be able to have more conversations to get a fuller picture of what's actually happening there, and really to it's just I don't want to point fingers. I just want to learn. I want to understand where we are in that, just so then we can have some conversations about where we could go from there to help support this work. And then I did have that conversation I mentioned with Brad Dirkson and Kelly Heineke. Basically, again, trying to figure out, okay, so what could we do? And I did have a conversation with them around possibly doing some micro-credentialing or in some way doing an endorsement on the certificate. Trying to understand what circumstances or criteria we would need to have this happen, the kinds of documentation or the actions perhaps that educators might need to have, and then start looking at how we might to do this through a repository for educator resources or artifacts, creating vignettes. Chadron State. Hey, yeah, Wesleyan. Yeah, great. Thank you. Just finding avenues to build on assessment literacy, and then possibly folding those into whatever criteria or circumstances we might be able to utilize either a micro-credentialing or go back to an endorsement of some way, just because I think to have that on a certificate really means something. It meant something to me when I got it through UNL's program. And I just feel like that really supports and makes it important again. It's not that assessment is the most important thing by any means, but it just needs to, I think, come back to good teaching. It's all connected to strong instructional practice, and I'd like to see us expand that. Also within this is working with content people to determine what kinds of formative assessment supports we would look at for them, specific to their discipline, not just being content agnostic, but content specific in the supports that we would offer. And then frame this probably around, or hopefully around, high quality instructional materials, have those conversations around the achievement level descriptors and progressions, And then, as I mentioned, identifying content-specific supports versus agnostic supports. And then one of the final pieces is to create a professional learning system much like Michigan's. They have what they call, theirs is FAME, but what they do is utilize a coach, what do they call those? Lead teams, and then there are the folks that are actually in the building working with the teacher. So they have a 4-level system. And so what I was looking at is, you know, how that might work in Nebraska, because I want the teachers to feel like they are supported. We really, just to drop this training on them and then expect them to go into the classroom and be successful, that's not going to work as well as it would if we had someone working with them in the building. And one of the things that I don't have here, but we want to bring into the conversation is the ESU, because I don't think in many of our small rural schools that they're going to have the capacity necessarily to have someone to be that person that's going to be the building experts that's trained in formative assessment processes and be able to then communicate with the coaches and so forth. The final piece to this is a person that we have not hired yet, but we are in the midst of hiring, and we should have someone on board hopefully by next week. And this is going to be the formative assessment professional learning lead who will work with Allie in the development of professional learning around formative assessment practices. And the one reason why we did that is we want to accelerate the work of the formative assessment supports network, getting this rolled out fairly quickly instead of, unfortunately, the 3 to 4 years that we were probably looking at without having someone who would be in this role. So the responsibilities of that person is going to more likely be in the professional learning area. And so that's the overall plan. And I do want to get back to this. Can you guys see that? Can you see the agenda? No? Okay. I sometimes forget that you have to, I know there's a way to do it. I just don't know what it is yet. Here we go.
When you
So
go
getting-
to show, it's the difference between showing your screen and showing the document. I had to
Ah.
learn that the hard way myself.
Okay, got it. All right, so that's the review of the overall supports network system that I'm thinking of. So I guess one of the questions I have for you guys is, what do you see already in either your district or Amy in the ESU system? Are there things that are already in place that speaks to the work that I'm outlining here?
I can speak for the ESU. I think in my ESU anyway, we support 21 districts and there's 21 different things going on. And so, you know, some districts have their own support, some utilize us, some are starting from scratch, some want their own. And so I guess my thinking is when this work happens, it's going to help bring a lot of people together and have the same language and a lot of the same supports. I know you had mentioned CSC. We have the teacher prep program there, of course, and I didn't go there, I didn't attend there, but one of our staff developers works with them very closely, and she actually teaches an assessment course for teacher prep programs. And so we do have that connection going on as well, but it's just, I guess, I think it'll be nice to have a common, I guess, to bring everybody together in this work, or a path for that.
Yeah. I know LPS has something because Leslie had mentioned that you folks have some assessment thing, formative assessment processes or some things already in place that you folks work with your teachers, I think.
We've got a lot. It's all pretty contextual. So as you get farther down the, or as we get farther down the road and we figure out some specific needs, we're glad to share anything we've got that line up with those specific needs. Related to that, I've got a slight concern, but I'm excited to see where it goes about the scope of the project. In some ways, we all know on this call that when you're talking about assessment literacy, you're talking about a wide range of things. And even in the Michigan, and just looking through the MAC assessment literacy standards for teachers, that's a lot, right? And it's a lot of really important stuff.
Mhm.
I worry a bit that the term assessment literacy, we think we know what we mean by it, but it means so many things that we'll have a hard time getting our arms wrapped around it. Like, I don't think we would say the phrase pedagogical literacy. I think we would talk about that within specific context because we know that's huge. I think assessment literacy deceptively sounds like one thing, and we all know what we're talking about with that one thing, but I think it's probably a collection of a bunch of different sort of modules and parts.
Yeah.
And maybe it might be more useful to develop standards or ideas for those different parts rather than think that we can describe assessment literacy as one thing.
Okay.
But we're glad to share anything about different modules when we get.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
I would kind of echo Rob's concern. I think the scope and scale of this is pretty significant. I'm currently teaching just a 3-credit class for Doan and feel like we aren't even scratching the surface for prospective principals. But in Elkhorn, one of our, what I would call, in my previous life, would have called tenure requirement courses, is about helping new teachers understand the difference between, and the difference and the similarities between formative, interim, and summative assessment, and how to use those and what those look like within our own district. So some folks come in with what I would consider good understanding of those concepts, and some do not, but basically we kind of contextualize that to our district. The other thing I would say is that we've embedded formative assessment within our instructional model. And so it's one of what we call the every lesson components. We expect there to be formative assessment every day in some form. And so it's integrated with all of the work we're doing around our instructional model. That doesn't mean to say that we are all experts or that we're all doing that perfectly. But it is, I do think it's important to not make assessment a silo when we talk about good classroom practices. And so that's the way we've approached it. And I think that's helped our teachers understand that it's not an event, that it's part of the way they plan and execute a lesson each and every day.
Right, which is the way it should be. Absolutely. So thank you for saying that.
I would agree with you, JD. I think that, and it's not a surprise that new teachers don't come out of teacher preparation programs being masterful at using formative or any type of assessment, because assessment is really part of the craft of teaching. It's a process, not a thing. Right. And so we don't expect teachers to arrive brand new in the classroom and be masterful at really anything. And so I think that what I've seen in the literature, though, suggests that the most effective programs are really about teachers having time to learn as they're going and try things out in the classroom and get feedback over a period of time. And so I hope that whatever we end up doing sort of leans in that direction rather than a bunch of like half-a-day workshops or something where people just come in and they go off. They need time to practice and to collaborate and to, I mean, it's not context free. You learn the things, but then you have to figure out how that fits in your own classroom, how that fits in the context of your school, how that fits in the context of your content area. And nothing we can tell them will do all that. It's
Right.
work that teachers have to do.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, I'd like, jumping off from that, I'd even push back a little bit on the generalization that new teachers are necessarily assessment illiterate. It really is if assessment is so context bound, then assessment literacy is super context bound. And I'd say a first year, this will make JD laugh, a first year kindergarten teacher is more assessment literate in the terms of in the context of assessment that they need than I am. That teacher is way more literate than I am about giving feedback to students about kindergarten learning objectives, the types of assessments they need to use and how they need to use them. So if assessment is tied up in the specific teaching and learning context, then I'm not sure, I'm never sure what I have to tell a teacher that is really truly useful to them in their context when I don't share their context. So I'm a little worried about generalizing about deficits or assets in assessment literacy across the board.
Sure.
A lot of times they don't recognize that as assessment. So
Right.
that's some of the conversation we have is the practices that they know and are quite good at, they don't necessarily recognize or even label in their own brain as assessment. And so that's some of the assessment literacy, honestly, is just connecting the dots that they already have.
Yeah. Has anybody had the light bulb go off when you say assignment, I mean assessment? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I would say, in Columbus, so it's been kind of a long journey. And really the emphasis has, I would say, kind of two areas. One has been really strong emphasis within the last 2 years on data literacy and just being able to understand. I mean, it's one thing. And when I say data, I mean broad, like you just did a little question to your class and you took in that information, right? So data literacy and how do I turn my data into action? I think teachers know about tests and they know about asking kids questions. What we often find is they don't have kind of a systematic way of like taking that in and thinking about it and then turning it into action in the classroom. And so that's been our emphasis for the past 2 years in my building in particular, and now it's kind of spreading out. We're in about year 3 of creating common formative assessments and common summative assessments and summative, whatever, but unit assessments, I guess, across the district in every grade level, in every course. And so those are pretty solid-ish. And all of this is moving towards standards-based reporting, which will begin in the 22-23 school year. And so our teachers, I think in particular, are really seeing the whole of the formative, like they're seeing that whole in their knowledge, but they're also seeing that whole in what they have already created and prepared, because there's been so much emphasis on the common unit assessments and those common tests that they're giving across all the teachers who are teaching the same thing, right? That they're seeing that whole and recognizing that they don't have enough, again, systematic collection of that data to report out to either children or parents about how kids are doing on a particular standard. Yeah, and I would agree though with everyone else that as you were going through the list of all of the things, I was like, oh, holy crap, like this is going to take us this is going to take us forever. I'm not really sure. Like I sort of want to go like, okay, so what is absolutely critical? What are the things that we feel we have to do now to set us up to move forward on some of those other things, and kind of prioritizing some of this, because it is so broad and there is so much there that I'm just not sure how to even go at it, I guess.
Yeah.
So my concern, I agree that there's like a whole continuum, and I think we need to determine what is essential knowledge that every single teacher should have, and then how do we tier that from that essential knowledge? And as we tier that, how are we incentivizing people on those tiers? And I don't mean just incentivizing via compensation, but showing them career pathways as well. I mean, you're all in very different positions that are all utilizing this expertise. So do they see that as this is a career path I could go in if I go deeper on this, and they don't see it just as a tool for their teaching? Because one of the things that we look at is the fact that we limit people's career paths so often in education. The only thing they think is a teacher or a principal, and we need them to see this as a potential other career paths, perhaps to ignite some of their interest. But then how are we going to compensate along that way? And then how do we help people have the tools to self-evaluate along this, which includes, as you discussed, the common vocabulary. My concern is, as I look across the state on this, I know when I got in and I got my own endorsement and assessment, and I'd been teaching for 18 years, and I felt like a whole new world had just opened up to me when I got that endorsement. And I thought I'd been doing good assessment up until that point. And then I found out, well, no, not really. And so much of what I did is now impacting my job, because now I put together surveys, which are an assessment, right, sort of, and how you ask questions, right? Anyway, sorry, I won't go state the obvious, but giving people a position from where they can look at themselves on that, so they don't feel threatened that somebody's checking what I know about assessment, and then helping them build out. So here's where you say you are, and here's where you may want to get to. I like the idea of micro-credentials. However, we don't have anyone who's really significantly using micro-credentialing anywhere in Nebraska in a way that will do much beyond maybe puts a little stamp on your email, but there's no compensation for that. There's no professional recognition for that.
Right.
What other people are using them, we've yet to get anybody in Nebraska who's, maybe this could be the first, I don't know.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. The work around assessment literacy and the hopes of enhancing or expanding the assessment literacy in our Nebraska educators, whether they be teachers or curriculum specialists or principals or even superintendents. Does that vision fit with what you feel is important to provide for? I mean, I guess the question is, do you feel that I understand that the work is immense, but is that, other than trying to nail down how this is going to go, the work is still going to support the work in the classroom? Let's hope.
So I think it's essential for a classroom educator to know this at a level that validates their teaching and their students' learning. I think as you go up, what is needed in those different levels is very different. What a superintendent needs to know about instruction is incredibly different from what the kindergarten teacher needs. And by the way, thank you for valuing kindergarten teachers, because they are great at assessment. I appreciate that. But that's very different. And I think at the beginning of something like this, if you don't scope it, while understanding you've got to get to here, but what's really, you can't eat an elephant in one bite. So how do you begin to take off pieces of this where it will have the greatest impact in the field?
Yeah.
And for
Rob?
kids.
Based on what Maddie said, maybe we'd be better off defining the bytes and what parts of the educational universe each byte is useful for. And maybe we don't need one big, this is assessment literacy. Maybe defining the bytes and resources for the bytes would be more useful.
Okay.
And I think that that's kind of what I was trying to say, only you said it much better, Rob. That, yeah, no, truly, right? Yeah, like that, just that prioritization and categorizing what we're working on and what that timeline looks like.
Okay. So I know that I shared with you the Michigan, let me bring that up actually. I thought I had it all ready to go and I don't think I did. So let me find it real quick. get it on my desktop. Okay,
In the ones that you sent us, is that the really long one?
20 pages.
Oh, no. Did you send us that?
I thought I did.
Yeah. She said, it's the one that says Mac. It's called
Okay,
Mac.
I must have,
Yeah.
okay, darn it. I only printed the other one that had like, it was like 8 pages long and had a bunch of different
Ah.
standards. Gosh darn it. Okay, that's all
Oh,
right.
that's all right.
It's all right.
So this was put together by the Michigan Assessment Consortium, and this is what Michigan uses in their work within FAME, their formative assessment for Michigan educators. Okay, what the heck did I just do there? There. All right, so they have, they've broken it down into standards for the dispositions, performance, knowledge. So those are the 3 things that they identify. So they have elementary students and their families, secondary students and families, and then teachers, building administrators,
Mhm.
district administrators, policymakers, and then they have a glossary.
Hmm.
So that that was interesting to me that they included those groupings. I guess I'm interested to hear from you whether students, families are a part of this conversation in terms of expanding ideas around assessment literacy.
One thing I really liked about the Michigan document is that by defining the assessment literacy for different groups, it sort of groups them by different purposes, because how people use information at the state level, at the district level, at the school level, at the classroom level, and for parents and students is really different. And so the kinds of things that they need to know and their beliefs, I don't like that word dispositions. Maybe we can get rid of that, but something like beliefs might need to be a little different across. And so I did like that they had it divided into the groups, because then you can think about how different groups use data differently. And the other thing I did like was the glossary. I don't care what particularly is in it, but it is nice if we can define terms so that we're all on the same page. Because if you asked 10 different people to define formative assessment, it would all be different. And the definitions would like have a lot different meanings. And part of my problems, I think, even assessment literacy, that term also is used in a variety of ways.
Right.
And so I think the glossary would be really helpful as well.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, I liked the way they had the groupings. It would fit very nicely. Some of our districts have assessment plans or district assessment plans, and they have responsibility sections. And so it's like responsibilities of students, of parents, of teachers, of admin, and it fit this. It's not near to the detail of this, but I think it would mesh really well with what some of our districts are already doing.
Yeah, I agree with the vocabulary, with the glossary. CCSSO, I work with a group of the balanced assessment cadre or group, whatever you want to call them. And updating a glossary is part of the work that they are doing there. So this is the document that I was really interested in sharing and getting your feedback on. I don't know if you were able to see, there are ISLIC assessment literacy standards, measured progress, which is no longer existing. It's now with Advanced Ed. They created Cognia. They too have some work around assessment literacy and assessment literacy standards. I'm sure that there are other resources that are out there. I don't know, let me see if I can find my ISLIC stuff.
That's the one called Professional Standards for Educational Leaders, I believe.
Yep, you are right. I just need to, yep, there we go. Okay. Ba-bum. Okay, so here, these were crafted in 2015. And then, let's see. Here we
I
go.
noticed on several of these professional organizations that
Yeah.
it's really broad and their discussion of assessment is quite minimal.
Mm-hmm. So ethics and professional norms, curriculum. Okay, so here are the curriculum, instruction, and assessment pieces. So they have standards around, they just appears to have just that standard 4, unless I'm incorrect here. And then I know, as I mentioned, the new or the updated teacher and principal standards, effective standards that Kim Snyder's group put together, they have aspects of, okay, thanks, Amy. They too have aspects of that speak to assessment literacy on the part of the teacher and the principal. So let's see, get this back up here. So I guess one of the questions I have, we have just about, well, not 15 minutes left, but in the next 10 minutes, I'd like to hear from you. Where would you like to see us head? Do we have those conversations around formatting or breaking apart the assessment literacy? Do we do the glossary work first? Is that where we do a little bit of level setting and getting understanding first? Yeah, I'd like to hear that from you folks.
So it seems to me you need a longer work day where you really kind of dive into this. And I would probably start, I wouldn't start at your vocabulary. I would start at your tiers and who you feel you need to do this for, and then what you think are the groupings underneath it. I mean, I like the way Michigan lays it out. I'd like to look at a couple other ones and see what other components that we may feel need to be essential in what we're looking at. I don't think we need to start over with I mean, I don't want to adopt anybody else's wholesale, but I also don't want to, we don't need to, if people have got some good stuff out there, let's beg and borrow instead of just going crazy.
Right, and we like to call that Nebraska sizing, but that's okay. Rob?
Yeah.
Related to what Maddie said, it would really help me if we knew what this was for and who this was for. So specifically, if we can manage to make something, what would anyone do with it? And then who would do that? And then we use audience and purpose to drive what resources we find and our next steps. Because I think our group could make a hell of a document borrowing on the best of the resources that you found for us. And we could take another swing at defining assessment literacy. And I think it would be lovely. If we don't have an audience, we don't have a purpose, it'll sit there on a website somewhere and no one's going to use it.
And to tie on to Rob's point, I think we need to connect as many dots with current conversations that are happening across the district as well. I've used the teacher effectiveness standards and the principal effectiveness standards in my own classes, and I feel like they're a good place to start. They obviously don't have the level of specificity because they are standards, but we've had additional conversations about what that looks like and sounds like for a teacher and for a principal. And I think we could continue to define that, but I would agree. We need to decide our purpose and our audience first, and then connect that with existing documents within the state rather than have a separate set that districts have to figure out how to connect back together.
Right. And I will say on my part, the audience for this document is going to be, the purpose of this document is going to be the foundation for the professional learning work that we do around assessment literacy, and then specifically around formative assessment processes. The audience is going to be the folks who are going to be learning that or participating in that. I guess I see this as a foundational document for the work that we're going to continue on in the department, but then also what I'm hoping to do is have a conversation with higher ed to utilize this as a connecting document between the work that they do in higher ed in working with our pre-service teachers.
Yeah, I think when you get to talking about higher ed and what they may or may not put in for pre-service teachers, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. Adding anything to the curriculum is just, it's easier to push spaghetti uphill.
And an assessment conversation for a pre-service teacher, a teacher in training in higher ed, it's probably much better done given their curriculum specialty. I wouldn't want to try to teach reading teachers about assessment literacy at the same time as I'm teaching music teachers about assessment literacy.
Okay.
The other, so in the connection, as I was thinking about like the teacher effectiveness standards and or the educator effectiveness standards, and then, you know, assessment, I think the other place you can make a really strong connection to is back to our AQuest work. I think just about everybody on this call was at one point in that room as well. And so, you know, again, thinking about how we are connecting back to our current frameworks. And I think that connecting back to the AQuest model and those kinds of things helps also put some level of like, why do I need to do this? Right? How can this help my district? How is this going to actually like turn into a quantifiable outcome for our district? And I think that those kinds of connections would also be useful. And so if we can wrap this up in some of that work as well, I think that would be good.
Okay. One of the questions I have for you, and thank you all for that feedback, I appreciate it. And we're going to take what you've said and really reflect on the things that you've shared with us. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. I do have a question about representation for this team going forward. I I just wondered if you felt that there was a voice that wasn't a part of that, or bringing perspective to this group that you feel would be important to have.
I don't know who else is on this group, but I'm looking at photos and we look really white. So I'm just going by what I see, but we definitely need to be having ethnic diversity as well as other diversity in this group.
All right. I'll reach out to some folks.
I know we represent some of the larger school districts in the state. I think Omaha's probably got to be here too, because I can tell you, I mean, we probably need another ESU person, because that's who's going to be delivering this in smaller
Mhm.
districts, not tiny, but smaller
Right.
districts. That's
Right.
typically who's going to be doing that. But the big districts are the ones that are going to be doing it themselves. I mean, we're not going to send folks to the ESU, and we aren't remotely in the scale of OPS. So I would advocate for an additional couple of folks from ESUs around the state, and probably Omaha and or Millard.
Okay. All right. And as far as meetings, cadence, what is your sense around that? I know you guys are extremely busy, and it's a really bad time to ask you this, but where are you in terms of being able to meet? And
I'm a big fan of productive meetings, right? We walked in with an objective, we created some things, we did some things, and we walked out with some outcomes. And if that means that, I would have to give a half a day or a whole day to do some more in-depth work to come out with some concrete outcomes at the end of that meeting, I would rather do that than a whole bunch of short little meetings where it feels like we're constantly trying to get back into the groove of that.
Okay.
I just think that that'd be more productive and more respectful of all of our time, because you're right, it is really tight.
yeah.
And
Okay.
a couple of half-day meetings might be better than one whole-day meeting, just because it's easier to get away for, I mean, I think we need a chunk of time. I don't think we're gonna get much done in an hour at a time either. I totally agree with Amy
Sure.
on that. But to devote an entire day is much harder. I
I
think
agree.
you'll get us to really be focused for 2 or 3 hours at a time better than you will for the whole day.
Okay.
And I'm
Great.
okay with doing some things before we come together, because all of us right now, spring is a little out of control in general, but
Mhm.
even more so now.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with, if you tell me, read through this or identify things or do some kind of pre-work so we can jump
Okay.
right into the processing, because I have chunks of time here and there. It's just, they're not always terribly predictable.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it'd be good if we could have the materials a little bit soon. I mean, I
Yeah.
know
Yeah. No, I get it.
that's all fine, but just give us a little time to do
Sure.
the things ahead of time.
Sure. You bet. Okay. Well, thank you again. I so appreciate you getting back with us and being a part of this. Like I said, we'll take the notes and figure out some next steps based on your feedback, and I will get you the next steps, hopefully by the end of next week. So thank you.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure when, but we will see you again. Thank you. Take care.
Betty.
Jeremy.
Hey,
All right. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was a little surprised.
about what?
I guess I was surprised that I came away with the feeling like they thought that it was that it really wasn't feasible. Did I miss? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, like,
Hi there. So I was
Did-
telling Jeremy I was surprised, but maybe I shouldn't have been surprised. I got the idea that they felt it was not feasible to do the work.
Yeah. So did since I missed the beginning, did you kind of fill them in on what FAME looks like and that type of idea?
Yeah.
And they balked at that.
Well, I shared the whole vision of higher ed and assessment literacy expansion, and maybe trying to get back to some kind of certification or even micro credentialing, and
Yeah.
then the FAME model with
Yeah.
the coaches and the learning teams and the regional kind of thing. And yeah, so I don't know. I was hoping they'd be more excited about it.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'll say is that a lot of the people from large districts just feel like they